I'm going to call to order the City Council regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond.
Present.
Councilmember Jennings.
Here.
Mayor Garrett.
I am here. Oh, thank you. I invite everyone to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll take a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of item G, Daughters of the Revolution proclamation, and the addition of item H, Suicide Awareness Proclamation.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Jennings. Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
And Councilmember Barksdale.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. Next, we'll have public comments for the items that are on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone that wants to speak about anything that's on the agenda, please come to the lectern. And you can give your name and just the street. Anyone? 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 Okay, moving on. We'll have the presentation for the Finance Review Committee.
Go down there with the committee. All right, so I want to start off by introducing and recognizing the committee members of the Finance Review Committee. We've got Timothy Hillman here, I think Deborah McDonald sitting next to him, Regina Jones, and then Salim Siddiqui. So I want to thank them for giving up their time and their efforts over the last several months. Their input has been instrumental in them putting together a very solid recommendation for the city. And the three of them that I didn't know before, it's been nice getting to know them over the last several months. We are going to do a team presentation, so I'm going to do the first part here. I know council has read the full 18-page recommendation, but I do urge residents to do the same because there's a lot of detail in it that we're not going to have time to get into tonight. This is already going to go a little bit long, probably. So as you know, the committee was formed because it's becoming impossible to cover, or has been impossible for us to cover our annual expenses with our revenue stream. We've had to dip into the general fund the last several years, and in fact we know things coming in the future, like the near future, like the police contract that we're going to talk about later tonight, are going to make it nearly impossible to balance the budget without some type of reduction in services. So the committee was tasked with analyzing the general fund performance and determining a way to cover all of our expenses while growing the general fund and doing so in a sustained manner. So I'm going to talk about the issue, how we got here, the situation that we're in, and the other team members are going to talk about both our short-term and long-term recommendation and what effect those could potentially have on the residents. So as I said, over the last several years, our general fund has been decreasing because at the end of the year, our revenue doesn't cover our expenses, and we've had to dip into the general fund. So the committee started out by studying our expenses. We looked at the detailed line item city budget. We looked at our audit. We looked at the detailed financial report from January, and then we heard from our city treasurer and our city manager and our city treasurer, who I just realized I forgot to recognize at the beginning, who were also instrumental in the committee in providing input and helping out the committee. And then we also heard from a financial consultant who's worked with the city on many occasions over the years and knows our finances pretty well. So it became pretty clear pretty quickly that the issue that we were experiencing was not an issue of expenses. As the city manages expenses, we know that the city manages expenses pretty well, or very well. Yes, there are always areas where we can find cuts. and the city manager is doing a really good job of that. But the cuts that we can find, are not going to add up enough to solve the issue that we have with the general fund. So over the years, over the last, decade and a half or so, the city has done some significant things to reduce its expenditures, mainly through outsourcing. So for example, we've outsourced the Department of Public Works, police lockup service, the building department, our assessment services for taxes, technology assistance, and dispatch services as well. And then the other major thing that we've done in the past to significantly reduce expenses is we switched over from a defined benefit retirement program, so most people know that as a pension program, to a defined contribution, which is a 401k, which has saved the city a tremendous amount of money. And then more recently, we continue to build on some of those things by doing things like eliminating the recreation coordinator position and reducing the recreation budget. We stopped transferring funds from the general fund to the road fund. We've ceased publication of our town magazine. We're recording fewer events and meetings like this. We've continued to defer repairs and equipment purchases. And then what a lot of people don't realize is that we've transferred significant expenses to the Downtown Development Authority, the DDA. So portions of our staff salaries, code enforcement, landscaping services, planning and streetscaping services, service drive maintenance, again, to lessen the burden on the city itself. And then more recently, some of our more recent hires have been hires where we've hired people who are less experienced staff that will grow into the position, but so that we could save significant funds for hiring people who have a lot more experience. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of functions that are left that we can provide significant cuts to or outsource. The only real significant area that hasn't been touched is public safety, which does make up 55 to 60% of our general fund budget. But the committee did not consider outsourcing the police as a solution, given its importance of community policing to our residents and businesses. So as our financial expert noted, Lathrup Village does not have an expense problem, it has a revenue problem. So the committee agreed with that and then began to focus on the revenue side of the equation. And so on the revenue side, the city has had a revenue problem for essentially decades based on, let me step back. They've had a revenue problem that's increasingly getting worse and continues to worsen. And the cause of this issue is really multifaceted and has a lot to do with the punitive tax laws that we're under with the state of Michigan. So I'm going to describe some of those in brief, but again, you can find out a lot more detail in the recommendation or some of the town halls that we've done. So the first big issue that we have is Proposition A, which I believe council knows is a state tax law that's designed to control the taxable values of our homes that property taxes are based on. And what that law says is that the annual increase in taxable value is limited to the lesser of the inflation rate, or 5%. So keep that in mind for a moment, and remember that in 2008 we had the real estate market crash where taxable values plummeted by 50%, which equated to a 50% reduction in the revenue that the city has been collecting. And now, going back to what we just talked about in Prop A, the market value of our homes since 2008 has blown past where we were in 2008 and has increased, rather steeply. But what we just talked about Proposition A, that's ensured that we've only increased the taxable value by a maximum of 5%. And in fact, most years it was the inflation rate, which is only 2 or 3%. So while our market value has gone like this, our recovery in our taxable value has gone much slower. So even though this was 16 years ago, we still get less revenue than we had way back in 2008. So think about that for a second in terms of trying to manage a city with revenue that's still below a 2008 level. So as prices continue to rise and the city no longer had adequate revenue, it balanced its budget by deferring maintenance, repairs, and capital needs. So after almost 20 years of these deferrals, a lot of them can no longer be ignored, and they're putting strain on our current budgets. In fact, the capital improvement program, if you look at it, has about $20 million in identified spend. A lot of that has to do with deferred expenses that continually get deferred from year to year to year. And probably the best example is our roads. We failed for decades to put significant funds into our road system. The roads were crumbling, residents were screaming out about the roads, and we ended up having to pass a millage because we couldn't afford to fix our roads with the general fund finances. So that's Prop A. Headley is another issue that we have to deal with, which controls the amount of revenue that the city can collect from its residents. And basically what Headley says is that as our aggregate taxable value of the city increases, we have to reduce our millage rate so that we get no more money than we got in the prior year. And so given that the aggregate taxable value almost always increases from one year to the next, what that means is that our millage rate continues to decline year over year, resulting in less revenue for the city. And so as you all know, the chartered millage rate for the city is 20 mills. And so by 2010, Headley had reduced our millage rate all the way down to 16 mills. So we had lost 20% of the revenue that we should be collecting. So the city put what's called a Headley override on the ballot, and the residents supported it by over a 2-to-1 margin, which basically gave the city the permission to restore the millage rate back from 17 all the way up to 20. And so we moved it back up to 20, but now 14 years have passed since we did that. 2024. 14 years have passed, and Headley has had its effect again, lowering that millage rate down to 17 mills. So again, we're collecting significantly less revenue than we had than we should be collecting. So the only ways to counter Headley are either via a Headley override or by building new structures outside of the business district. And as we all know, we don't have available land outside of the business district to build new structures. So what that means is that our millage rate is just going to continue to fall, putting more pressure on the city's finances. And then in addition to those two factors, we also have an issue with state shared revenue. We send taxes to the state. The state is required constitutionally to give money back to the municipalities, and what they've done starting in around 2000 was not give the full share back that they're required to the city, to cities across the state. And so according to the Michigan Municipal League, Lathrup Village has lost another $2 million in revenue over the last 2 decades because of those cuts. So again, that adds more pressure, and it elicits more deferrals in spending and so forth. And then there are other factors as well. So inflation is another one. The last 3 years, 7.5%, 6.5%, 3.4%. That makes everything across the board more expensive while our revenue stays flat. So our buying power gets reduced. So that, everything from office supplies to salaries to, police cruisers is way more expensive. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is that, especially longer term residents, is that we have a lot of expenses now that we never had to deal with before. So things like video camera vests that the police wear, which are very expensive. They have expensive data retention and storage policies associated with them, mandated training, software licenses, sanitation, building security, data security, and so on. There's a ton of expenses like that. A great example is, council at our August meeting, we approved almost $50,000 in new spend for tasers. That's something that we never had to buy a decade ago. And in fact, those tasers are only going to last 5 years, and we're going to probably have to spend $60,000 in 5 years to cover the cost of those. So all of these things together have put an enormous strain on the city budget. As our revenue continues to decline, prices are increasing, new expenses are rising, and deferred expenses, are essentially coming due. So with our existing revenue stream, it's difficult to fund the day-to-day operations alone. And so to prevent cuts in services, the city has continued to defer expenses and take money out of the general fund. And obviously that trend can't continue because our general fund balance has been reduced below their optimal levels. And as I said earlier, we've got expense increases like the police contract that's going to be make it very difficult for our fiscal year '25 budget. Not to mention issues that we would love to be able to address, like a crumbling DPW building, failing HVAC systems, new roofs that need to be replaced, pension funding, replacing outdated equipment, and many other things. And probably the worst yet is that this continued decline in revenue makes it nearly impossible to do a lot of the things that our residents want us to do to make this the type of city that they want to live in. For example, having a robust recreational program, having a rec coordinator position, upgrading our parks, upgrading our playground equipment. We all love our trees, but we can't afford to maintain them properly and replace them when they die, community room updates, and many other things. So the committee felt strongly that our residents don't want to see cuts in services and that they would rather see our services maintained and improved. So because of that, the committee is recommending a short-term and a long-term recommendation to increase our revenue. Before I turn it over to Timothy, to talk about our long-term recommendation, I did want to note that municipalities are a little bit handcuffed in the fact that there's only a limited number of options that we have legally based on the state laws to increase our revenue. We did have a municipal finance expert talk to the committee and go over what all those potential options are, and we did discuss them with this consultant. And then we had subsequent meetings where we went through those individual items one by one to try to determine which ones may or may not fit to increase our revenue. And all of those items are in the appendix of the document, so why we didn't choose each of those particular items. And most of the time, it was reasons because they just didn't simply apply to us. So just to give you one example, one of the options was a debt millage. So what we would do is we would put a millage out to the residents. If it's approved, we would collect money that would be earmarked to pay off debt, which would then free up general fund money to be used for other things. Well, that doesn't really apply to us because we don't have a lot of long-term debt. The 3-year road project that we just did and the 3-year sewer and water project that we did, those are both fully funded. The only really long-term debt that we have is from 2 sewer projects that were done 15 years ago. We're almost done paying them off. It's only about $100,000, which isn't going to solve the issue. And that money comes out of the water and sewer fund. So for those reasons, it made no sense to consider that as a particular option. So they were all discounted for those kinds of reasons. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Timothy to talk about our long-term recommendation to increase our revenue.
Thank you, Bruce, not only for your comments tonight, but also for your exceptional leadership of the committee over the course of the last several months. So thank you. I appreciate it. My name's Tim Hillman. Nice to meet those of you who I haven't met yet. For 15 years, I've worked as a financial controller. Currently, my position is with a large wire and cable distributor. We're one of the 50 leading wire and cable distributors in the country. And I oversee numbers that are quite large, in fact, quite larger than the ones we oversaw in this committee. I'm one of 4 volunteer resident committee members. The other 3 are seated to my right. And we've worked diligently for the last several months to consider the city's finances and recommend what we believe is best to maintain the level of services the city is currently offering residents. Like Bruce said, we have a 2-part recommendation. There is a long-term recommendation that I'll speak briefly about, and then one of my colleagues will talk about the short-term recommendation. So to get down to it, we recommend the City Council add a question to the November 2025 ballot to override Headley to restore the generating operating millage to its charted amount of 20 mills, and also to restore the refuge millage to 3 mills. At present, the current millage rate is something like 17-point-something%. It will reduce again by the time November 2025 swings around on the calendar. So it'll be slightly less than that 17-point-something number when it comes down to voting. So we would be talking about approximately 3 to 4 mills restored. Also, we recommend the ballot question include language to lock the Headley override for 10 years. I believe it was about 15 years ago, 2010. It was 10 years ago? Okay.
No, my math is
Yes,
off.
yes.
2010.
Almost 15 years ago, in 2010, that residents in Lathrup Village voted to override Headley then. At that time, there was not a lock, so it was overridden to its 20 chartered millage rate and then continued to roll back as property values increased in the city. Our recommendation is the product of our own analysis of the city finances, but also input from the city administrator, the city treasurer, and outside counsel, specifically a consultant from Plant Moran. Our recommendation is also common. This is not a unique conversation that a finance committee is having with a council. There are many communities in Michigan, including several in Oakland County, whose budgets rely on Headley overrides to some extent or another. I already mentioned that back in 2010, residents in Lathrup Village at about a 2-to-1 ratio voted to approve a Headley override. And incidentally, residents in Ferndale, one of our neighboring communities, will be voting on a very similar ballot measure come November 2024. So this is not out of left field by any stretch. So that's the long-term recommendation. Miss anything?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, you know, it also, to some extent, confirms what we were told in our audit last year and for several years before that, I believe the quote was something to the effect of, if Lathrop wants to maintain the same level of services, it needs to consider doing a Headley override. So kind of came to the same conclusion as the auditors.
Yes. Thanks.
And so Salim is going to talk about, Salim Siddiqui is going to talk about our short-term recommendation.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. Yeah, so I'm going to talk. Tim did a great job on the long-term recommendation. So with that, so basically, as was said by Bruce and Tim, due to increasing costs and the stagnant revenue stream, it's very difficult for us to deliver this, for the city to deliver the services that the residents need. So the long-term recommendation is a Headley override. The issue with that is it will not go on the ballot until November 2025, and therefore, if it's passed, we won't see any revenue from it until summer of 2026, right? So it's going to be a couple of years from now before we see any increased revenue for the city. So due to that factor, we need to have a short-term recommendation as well to try to help with the funding that the city needs. You know, they're going to need it, like, you know, next spring and summer, right? So our short-term recommendation, well, the thing I wanted to say too is that the city needs this funding in the short term to cover costs of vital public safety services, including the new police contract. You know, that's going to be a big deal, and like Bruce mentioned earlier, we're not going to be able to balance our budget with that increased cost in the short term. Thus, for those reasons, we're making a short-term recommendation as part of our overall recommendation. And the short-term recommendation that we're making is for the City Council to use this authority to enact a Public Act 33 special assessment for public safety. So under this act, cities with populations of under 14,500 can levy up to 10 mills for public safety operations and 10 mills for public safety capital. If enacted, the funds from this assessment would come to the city in summer of 2025, so next year. Enacting such an assessment would give the city the funds it needs to cover the increased public safety costs that are going to be coming in the short term. And that'll help us until the Headley fund, the Headley override funds arrive, if it's passed, that funds will come in 2026. The funds from this assessment, the Public Act 33 assessment, would be earmarked for public safety specifically, and they could cover the cost of that police contract, for example. This assessment can be enacted by the City Council, doesn't require voter approval. As mentioned, the maximum millage that can be assessed under this act is 10 mills, but we would recommend that the City Council limit that increase to 3.1 mills. i.e. the same increase that the Headley override would provide. So we're limiting the increase, that's our recommendation. We also recommend that the resolution to provide this authority for this assessment expire after 1 year. It should not be unlimited. There should be an expiration date. Thus, that is our short-term recommendation. It's a limited millage increase, and the authorization is limited and should expire, and should provide the funding that the city needs in the short term until Headley override is coming. I think
Thank you.
Regina's going to be next. Thank you.
Yep.
Regina will be next. to talk about
So
it.
Regina will talk about what effect this would have on the residents.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Regina Jones. I'm an 8-year resident of Lathrup Village. I've enjoyed my 8 years here. And I have enjoyed the services that Lathrup Village have provided to the residents, to myself in particular. So you've heard about the Headley override, and it would increase the millage. It would be a 3.1% increase to the millage, okay? I'm sorry, 3.1 mil. But what does that mean in dollars and cents to your residents, okay? Considering that the average taxable value of homes in Lathrup Village is about $90,000, that would be an annual increase of $280, just an average increase of $280. But if we look at actually how the homes will be affected, about 43% of the residents in Lathrup Village are long-term residents. They've been here more than 10 years. So they have a lower taxable value on their property. They would see about an increase of about $230 per year. So an annual increase of $230 per year. And keep in mind, if you put Headley on the ballot on 2025, it gets approved, they will not start to see this increase until 2026. Okay, so that's one thing to note. So that's about 43% of the residents who are long-term. You have about 51% of the residents who have been here somewhere between 4 to 10 years, okay? They will see an annual increase of somewhere between $230 to $460. I did my own analysis for my property. I would see an increase of about $409 just for myself, because I've been here 8 years or so. Now, you do have 5% who are more recent. They've bought within the last 4 years, okay? Of course, property values increased by then, so their taxable values increased a little bit. They would see an increase of anywhere from $400 to $600 annually. And then you have the 1%ers, the most recent people who have purchased, like within the last year or so. They would probably see an increase of more than $620 annually, okay? So what does it mean to the residents? If the increases, based on how long you've been a resident, would be anywhere from $200 to over $600 annually.
Yeah, for 94%, yeah, for 94% of the residents,
Yeah,
it'd be around
yeah.
under $600.
And that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the important thing that distribution, points out is, again, we're handcuffed by state law, and state law basically bases millages on taxable value, and the longer you've been here, the more you've been protected by Proposition A, so the lower your taxable value is gonna be, whereas if you've only been here a short time, your taxable value tends to be higher, but.
Yeah, we wish it could be an equitable spread.
Right.
However, like you said, Proposition A handcuffs the city to what they can charge their residents with this millage.
Yeah.
Okay?
And with that, I guess we will open it up to questions for council for the committee.
Does anyone have any questions?
I want to thank the committee for doing the work that you've done. It's it gives me personally a lot more confidence in whatever decision we end up having to make, because the due diligence has been done to look at revenues versus expenditures and various options that have been available to deal with that issue. So thanks for that. So as you were just saying, the most recent residents who are going to get the biggest hit
Yes.
if a Headley override or a public safety special assessment were to get passed is about $620 a year, or $52 a month on approximately. So The special assessment doesn't require a vote of the residents. The city council has the ability to pass a special assessment on our own. But if at some point we go forward with putting a Headley override on the ballot and it doesn't get passed for whatever reason, what does the committee see as a recommended outcome in that result?
Well, that's going to put it back on council, right? Because if we don't have the revenue, then council is going to have to make some hard decisions. You know, which, you know, we put a list in the, I think in the recommendation of, you know, well, let me step back. We recommended in the recommendation that council put together a list of what some of those potential losses and services could be as part of an informational campaign, so that residents have a very clear view of what they're voting on and what the consequences are of it not passing. But what those things are, I mean, it could be cuts or outsourcing of the police, it could be elimination of library services. I don't have the list in front of me. You guys remember what some of the other ones were? If I grab, but
Probably some reduction in public works,
Public
DPW
works,
services.
yeah, but I mean, it'll basically fall back onto council. I don't know, you got it?
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly where in here it was. Yeah, but I don't remember where it exactly is, but it
can
would
read it.
basically mean that, you know, council is going to have to decide, you know, how they balance the budget. And because we're required by law to have a balanced budget, and if we don't have the revenue to cover certain things, you know, it could be the elimination of all recreation programs. It could be, well, it couldn't be LEAF because we're paying for that separately in a millage. But yeah, I mean, we have to figure out what services. It could be closing city hall for a day a week. You know, could be reducing building department services. I mean, there's a lot of things we could look at, but, you know, we felt pretty strongly that, you know, residents don't want that.
So you noted that, you know, the stratification between like longer-term residents, about 43% of the housing, 4 to 10-year term residents, about 51% of the housing. So, like, those are going to be the least impacted people by this.
Yeah.
But for those that 6% or so that are 4 years or less, in your research, did you become aware of any relief programs or, you know, things that residents could potentially apply for to get some assistance from some government agency?
Yeah, there are hardship relief programs that are available for the county. And, you know, people would have to apply to those. I don't remember what the particular parameters are. I know we looked at that as a council when we were talking about the road millage. I just don't remember off the top of my head what those are, but they are out there.
So I imagine if we decided to go forward with something like putting a Headley override in the ballot, part of the education program around it would have to have some specificity around what types of programs are available for assistance, who qualifies.
Right, I think last time for the road millage, we did put that information, I believe it was in the fact document. And I'm sure we would put together the same type of document for this. In fact, that would be the next step. If council decides to move forward on this, then obviously that's a long process. As Mike talked about in the study session, it requires some resolutions, it requires public hearings, and so forth. With the Headley, it would require, with the Headley override, it would require going out to the Attorney General and the Governor for approval, those kinds of things. So it is a long process. And we would also, you know, the city would need to put together an education program, and we would include a fact document in that. I mean, we can't advocate one way or the other legally, but we can put together factual information for the residents so that they can make the best informed choice for them.
Did you all see how extensive Ferndale's fact document was? Was that something you guys looked at?
Tim, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
I think he was just saying yes.
Yeah.
I mentioned in my remarks earlier that the residents of Ferndale will vote on a Headley override come November 2024. In preparation for that vote, their finance committee, in conjunction with their city government, put together a very elaborate document intended for the community to educate themselves on what a Headley override means and how the city might be impacted in its passage or in its failure. I believe, Councilperson, the document you're referring to is that one, which is different than the document this committee supplied to council. That document was intended for your review. It's not necessarily intended as a piece of education for the community. But I believe we would all be in agreement that a similar document to Ferndale's public-facing document would be helpful in helping residents understand what they're voting for or against come November 2025, assuming council elects to put Headley override on that ballot.
Thank you.
But yes, we did reference it thoroughly, and it is a very nice document.
Yeah, we considered mimicking it, but we really decided that the audience of what our committee was doing is you, whereas their audience was multifaceted. And they also were in a little bit of a different situation, which also was reflected in the document. They had, I should say they have a Headley rollback that's currently in place that had a 10-year lock on it, and that expires this November. So they wrote their document from a perspective of restoring the Headley that they already had, and what would be lost if they don't restore it. So ours had a little bit of a different message to it. So we didn't quite go with that model. But you're right. We do need to put together information like that for the community if council approves this.
And if we were to approve the special assessment, would the financial committee be responsible for the education for the residents for that one as well, along with staff, or would that just be like, okay,
I think that would be the cities. I mean, we would be willing to, I'm sure, stay on and help with the education, piece. Our major goal was this document that we're presenting to you tonight, but we're definitely willing to help with the education. But it would fall back probably to Mike and his team and the council.
I can't remember. Did you guys touch for the special assessment? You did specify that the cost would be going to public safety, correct?
Yeah, so by law, the PA 33 is required for public safety, raising funds for public safety. So what it says is that you can raise up to 10 mils for capital and 10 mils for public safety capital and 10 mils for public safety operations. So that money that we would collect would be earmarked for public safety. So the first thing it would go to would be the increase in the police contract costs, and then it could go for other existing costs. And the idea there, in the short term anyways, is that would free up money in the general fund that could be used elsewhere. Now, that was an option that we did talk about for an overall solution, to just do a Public Act 33, but we didn't like the idea as a committee of moving the money from one place to the other. It was felt a little bit like a shell game, and we felt we should just be straightforward with the voters. But we had no choice. There was no other option for a short-term solution, so we had to fall back to a Public Act 33 for the short term, and that's why we recommended just a 1 year, that the resolution be only for the amount that we would get for a Headley override had it been in place, and for 1 year specifically, and to expire after a year.
Cool. Thank you. Last thing, I just wanted to say that it was 17.3 mils. I just thought that we should be very clear. While some people might not have the document.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm sorry, 17.3 mils is the current millage rate?
And so this was, the Headley override, that was one of yours, the short term. But my concern is that, and I know that we have to figure out how we're gonna build revenue, but my concern is that we're driving people out of Lathrup. We have a I'm not gonna say more of a senior population that's on fixed incomes, and where some of us can, $300, $400 a year is not a, big deal to some, but to others it could be detrimental. And so I'm really concerned about that, because along with our millage our taxes going up, everything else is going up along with it. And the one thing that most people are taught is you keep your house. That's the one thing that you can have as your asset, and that, all that. But it just, I am a little frightened from even saying that, because, and I know that you all said that we have to cut services and things like that. So, I wanted to hear from you two to see what your thoughts were.
As far as cutting services?
No, I hadn't heard from you two. Bruce did the majority of the talking, so I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were.
As a resident and as a senior citizen,
Oh, stop.
I am one of your senior citizens. Like I said, my own taxes will go up $400 per year, okay? And you're right, that's a lot to swallow. But you have to weigh, do I pay this extra, or do I risk losing city services? You're right, we're seniors. I don't want to be worried about, can I walk the streets safely at night? I want to know that there's a police force out there. I don't want to have to worry about, who's going to pick up my trash because the city can no longer afford, and costs are going to go up some way. If they don't pass the heli, then either we don't get the services, or we have to pay extra for the services. And so, and letting the citizens know ahead of time is allowing them to also plan. This is something that wouldn't start to hit them until 2026. So you're giving them fair warning that, hey, it's this or that. It's like balancing your budget at home.
Right.
It's either this or that. Yeah, I have to buy my groceries, I have to pay my mortgage and everything else. So where do I cut my costs at? And so the city is like anybody else with a budget. It's like my revenue is going down, my expenses are going up. How do I balance that? So from my perspective, do I want to pay another $400? No. My tax bill is high enough as it is. However, I also want to walk my dog at 8 o'clock at night. I also want my trash picked up on Monday morning. I also want those leaves picked up when I put them at the curb. I also want a clean city. I don't want tree limbs falling because we can't maintain trees. I take my dog to the park. I want the parks to be safe and clean, which they're not doing right now. But so you have to weigh that out. What do you want?
Yeah, I concur with her on that.
Yeah, come to the
Been a
microphone.
resident for 25
You could just move that.
Just move them, give her the microphone.
Okay. But again, I concur. This is Deborah. I've been living in Lathrup for about 25, 26 years, something like that. The same difference. Obviously, these prices or these increases are never comfortable for anyone. It's like when we go to the grocery store, when you go get gas, and you factor all those into your everyday living. But the possibility of having our public safety outsourced to Southfield and losing the distinction of the reason why I moved to Lathrup Village 25 years ago, and having the villagey and the comfort of being here, it's a trade-off. Even if it were $1,000, for some people, of course it's detrimental. I would try to figure out a way to make it happen, because this is where I want to be. So again, I think it's just personal decisions on people, and if they agree with it or not. But again, if you want to keep Lathrup Village being as unique and comfortable as it is, I think that is just something we just need to consider.
Yeah, and I think, Mayor, what you said a second ago is pretty poignant, but it's also kind of a double-edged sword. From the perspective of residents, you said everything is going up, it's becoming more costly, and this is going to put an additional burden on the residents. But the other edge of the sword, which I know is that everything is more expensive for us as a city too. And the unfortunate thing is we have no way of increasing our revenue significantly as it stands through property taxes, other than some sort of millage. So it's we as a city are feeling the same pain that residents feel as well. So
And so it was not cost effective to shut City Hall down for a day?
I will say, we spent a lot of time talking about the spirit of the Finance Committee, what our intention was, why we existed, and what we were called upon to do. And one option is to do nothing. In a way, that feels more objective to me, because it feels like deciding for the residents of Lathrup Village that increased revenue, although necessary for the maintenance or perhaps even improvement of city services, is not worth a higher millage rate. So we decided we had to recommend something. And the city is facing a revenue problem. And although some members of the committee have shared their personal opinions on whether or not they perhaps would vote to override Headley, our support of this recommendation isn't necessarily our vote for this proposal. I don't pretend to know how my fellow committee members would vote for a Headley override or not. We came into this under the spirit of presuming Lathrup Village residents would either want to maintain or improve the level of services they're already receiving. And in order to do that, it is apparent to us that we must do something to address the revenue problem this city, like many others in Michigan, including many in Oakland County, are facing, and that is to increase revenue. And the way that municipal governments do that is by taxing its residents. So I don't pretend to know. I have a feeling, based on some of the previous comments, how some of my co-committee members may vote on a Headley override come November 2025, but it's possible some of us may vote no if the question is posed that way. Ultimately, and especially with an effective community education campaign, the vote, should it come to that in November 2025, is residents' way of telling themselves and council what they want from Lathrup Village.
Correct.
They may vote to turn down a proposed Headley override. And so long as they're voting for that with an understanding that their services they've come to enjoy will be compromised, it's not up to us to decide if that's right or wrong. That's a subjective decision residents will make with their vote. So I do want to be clear that our recommendation isn't our vote. That is
Absolutely.
private and personal to us. It is simply what we've deemed necessary and best for solving the problem at hand, which is a revenue problem.
And then just to respond to your question of shutting City Hall down. You know, like Bruce said, we did look at those short-term things. But, you know, how much will we actually gain?
Right.
You know, will we gain enough to cover the shortfalls that we need? And so we did consider things like shutting it down. What if we, you know, made cuts here or made cuts there? We're looking for something that's long-term and sustainable, and that will actually give us the bang for the bucks that we're looking for.
I feel like Bob Barker with this.
Come on down.
So, yeah, I just want to echo, yeah, nobody wants a tax increase, nobody likes a tax increase. And like when we started this, some of us were asking the questions like, do we really need to increase taxes? Or can we get revenue somewhere else? So we looked at all those, you know, angles of where is there revenue? We looked at, you know, can we get grants? Can we get, you know, increased lease deals on the stuff we lease out, cell towers or whatever? And the conclusion was that, you know, we really don't have the ability to increase revenue very much from those sources. Even the grants cost money, you have to match it, right, from, you know, a lot of these grants. So that comes out of the city's pocket as well. So just like Tim said, you know, eloquently, and it is right on, we go in thinking, okay, the city has a revenue problem. What proposal can we give it? What proposal can we provide to raise revenue for the city to cover their expenses? And if the residents don't want it, they can say no.
Right.
And they can be okay with having a city that has maybe some reduced services. Hey, and maybe I'm leaning that way too, you know. But that's the residents are gonna have to make that decision if you guys approve it and if it gets on the ballot and we go forward from there. You know, but I think what we've learned is that I think we've cut in so many areas. There's not that much more to cut except for the public safety piece. And so that's going to be the decision, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why, we mentioned in the recommendation the importance of having a list available to residents to, a realistic list of what services could be lost if a Headley doesn't pass. And then with the grants, that Celine mentioned, I went back and did a calculation. In the last 7 years, we've had $4.7 million, I believe it is, in grants. And as Salim said, the kind of, again, a double-edged sword, because if we get a grant, we get a big benefit, but we have to come up with some form of matching dollars. The other issue with grants is the large, I didn't calculate the percentage, but I'm gonna guess it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85% of the grant money that comes in is for money that's not spent out of the general fund. It's for water and sewer infrastructure and things like that. So, we can't rely on grants, and like you said, we have no ability to, there are a lot of other revenue sources that we have that are more minor, like cell phone leases, or cell phone tower leases, but we don't have the ability to increase those substantially. We have, the report that we put in January talked about a lot of increases that we could do as a city, like fee increases and building permit increases, and Mike has already implemented those, and those are relatively minor, but every little bit makes a difference, but that's not going to, the other revenue sources that we have are not going to get us the money that we need to preserve services and face, in light of some of the increases that we're gonna be seeing relatively soon.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So it's clear, like, it's really, like you were saying, like a cost-benefit analysis that each person on the city council will have to make in order to decide, do we put this on the ballot or not? And then residents will have to make, if it ends up on the ballot, to vote in favor or against it. But there's a couple of just facts about that we're not going to be able to avoid. And Kelly kind of alluded to it earlier, that at some point you start pricing people out of being able to afford to buy homes in the city, right? So yeah, I've been here for 20 years and I decide to sell my house. Well, the millage rate is now increased, and so the buyer of my house is going to get the increased hit of the millage rate. So on its face, just by that alone, that's going to cost them a lot more to live in the house. But then we also have the issue of uncapped taxable value. That's also, I think, part of Prop A, right?
Yeah, so the one thing you just touched on that's important to notice, because to mention, because it's a misconception. So when you have the uncapping, everybody thinks, oh, well, if we're selling a lot of houses, that's great, because and for residents, uncapping is so for example, let's say you have a homeowner who's been here for 35, 40 years and their taxable value is $70,000. And when they sell that house, let's say they sell it for $420,000. That new owner is going to have a much higher taxable value, and typically it's half of the market value, so it would be $210,000 would be the taxable value for that new owner. So that new owner is going to pay 3 times more in taxes. So let's say the original owner was paying $4,000 in taxes, that new owner is going to pay $12,000 in taxes. So, a lot of people think, okay, well, then that's from a city finance perspective. If we've got some turnover in houses, that's great because the city's going to get more money. But go back to Headley. So what's going to happen is, while that one taxpayer is paying, $12,000, $8,000 more, what's going to happen is all the rest of us, because our aggregate taxable value is going to increase, so all the rest of us are going to pay a little bit less, because that millage rate is going to drop ever so slightly. So, she's going to pay $10 less, I'm going to pay $20 less, and so on across all the homes. And it pretty much negates the increase that we get from that one resident. So that one resident pays more, but the city still doesn't get any more revenue. So you can see how messed up our tax laws are, with respect to getting revenue for residents.
So it's
yeah.
It's a double hit, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, it's going to be harder to sell the house because it's going to cost the new homeowner 3 times more in taxes, as in your example, and the city's not going to see any benefit from that 3 times increase in the taxes that person is paying. So I just think that exacerbates the problem. Of course, economics, are cyclical. So what that will do, if the values of houses are going up and they become harder to sell as a result, and uncapped values on taxes on homes that have been owned for a long time end up being astronomical because of somebody selling a home that's been owned for 35 years to somebody who's buying it brand new, the market will adjust and the values of homes will decrease, and then that will also affect the millage rate, right? So the other thing that I wanted to ask about, unrelated to the tax base, is, the task that you guys were given was to try and figure out this issue for some defined period of time, and you've picked about 11 years, right? 10 years from the point where this thing would end up on the ballot potentially, plus the year before that where maybe a special assessment would be levied. Then we got to deal with this issue all over again in 11 years.
Just like we're doing now.
So it seems like every 10 to 11 years, this is going to just continue to be a problem. And because we can't build new buildings that would increase the tax base of the city. So I'm just calling attention to it, that this is really just, it's not kicking the can down the road. It is doing something about it during a defined time period, but it's not making the issue go away. We're going to have to continue to contend with this for years to come.
Right, and the one thing that we can keep our fingers crossed for, I mean, I know the current majority in the state legislature and governance has talked about trying to correct these issues. They haven't yet, but I think some of it had to do with, at least from some of the reading that I did, it was their majority in, I think it was the House, became a little bit less, and they thought it would have a little bit less likelihood of passing, but hopefully it's something that they'll continue to talk about and make some changes, because we're not the only municipality that's going through this. In fact, I wish I had brought, maybe I have it in there. Oh yeah, can I see that for a second? Yeah, so I asked the MML to to provide us with a document of all of the Headley related overrides that have taken place. I don't remember, do you remember what the time period was? It might have been in the last year, or maybe the last couple of years. Kind of microscopic print, but it's 4 pages like this. So there are a lot of communities across the state that are going through this same issue, and surprisingly, we didn't. I don't think we calculated. Oh, you did do 68%. At least if that's right up there, top 68% of them were approved. So. Okay.
I do want to respond, Jason, to the first of your 2 most recent points about home sales. For me, this is not hypothetical. I am a relatively new Lathrup Village resident. I don't mean to be presumptuous, but it is very possible I pay more in taxes than any other breathing person in this room, and the idea of paying more of them isn't exactly exciting to me. However, I will say that when I bought my home from Jeff and Pamela Beard a handful of years ago, who I know were paying a hell of a lot less in taxes than I was, I visited that home on a street that made me feel like I was on a horse and buggy traveling down a cobble road path. And it was only upon learning that the city of Lathrup Village had recently passed a millage to repair its roads that I had even more confidence to submit an offer on that home. So as a relatively new home buyer, of course I'm concerned about tax rates, but I'm also concerned about the condition of the city, as well as the services that city provides. So for me, it was an easy decision. And then I also don't have a crystal ball, but I can assure you, Jeff and Pamela Beard had no trouble selling their home for a hell of a lot more money than they bought it for. Yeah. I was the 3rd highest offer on their home, and it was only by the grace of God that those first 2 fell through that I got it. So point taken, and I think it's a very worthwhile consideration. Certainly nobody wants to live in a place where homes don't sell, especially if you're considering selling yours in the future. But according to my own very recent experience, I was happy to see that the roads were being fixed, and I was forced to be very competitive with the offer I made on the home. So that's anecdotal and personal.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but I want to tell a story as well. A few years ago, my street was a dirt road, and not the best upkept with. Me and another neighbor started a petition to see if the residents, if we could do a special assessment to get our roads paved. It was eye-opening to go to my neighbors and say, hey, we don't like this dirt road, can we have it fixed? We'll need to pay more, the city agrees. And to hear how much our taxes went up to afford that, to see all the angry faces, but then to hear it's worth it for this city. For me, I know it's asking citizens to vote on paying more in taxes for the city that they love is a very polarizing question. But I think as the council, as the committee, offered a solution for the foreseeable future, as opposed to doing nothing. I think a lot more people would be very upset to have the resources that we have cut as opposed to paying more. I know it's a big question to ask, but I'm really curious as to what the citizens would like. I think the 1 year short-term solution that you all offered will be very interesting because it will give citizens a heads up. Hey, this change has happened, and it will. I know it's not going to be great for everybody. I know some people might not be able to afford it, but I think it will also give them another bit of real data as to, is this what I want? Is this worth more, the same or more accommodations that we have? Thank you all for all the work you put in giving us this recommendation.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Thank you.
All right, I just want to thank the committee again. You can see from their responses what a sharp group we've got, and it was great working with everybody, and they did a tremendous job in helping to put together this recommendation, so thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the consent agenda. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved to second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. Now we'll move on to the action request for consideration of approval. First up is a request to receive and file Finance Review Committee recommendation.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the Finance Review Committee's recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make the point that this is to receive and file. This is not meaning that we are accepting the recommendation. There will be a lot more discussion about this for council to take action. We're just receiving it and filing it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett.
Yes. Next, thank you. Next, we have the request to approve Eastbound 11-mile cost share.
Thank you, Mayor. So as part of the Oakland County Federal Aid Committee, this has been on their books for the past couple of years. So Eastbound 11 Mile is scheduled to be repaved in 2025. Originally working with them, we thought this was going to be a fall 2025 project, which means it would be part of the fiscal year 25-26 budget. But working with the county and MDOT and our engineers, everything seems ahead of schedule, and they are actually planning to have this be a spring 2025 project, which means it is part of our current fiscal year. With that, we did not budget for it in this specific budget. However, we do have plenty of fund balance, and this has been planned over the past couple of years. So what we're looking for tonight is just a budget amendment to dedicate some funds for this project in the spring.
Thank you. Would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the budget amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just want to make just the same comment that I made in the study session. While this wasn't in our specific budget for this year, one of the things that we did, I think 4 years ago when we started with the 3-year road project, is we stopped transferring money from the major road fund to the local road fund. And the reason why we did that is so that we could build up this balance, because we knew that 11 Mile Road is going to need to be repaved, and this is the first of that. So while it wasn't budgeted this year, it's a planned expense, and we have been saving for it as a city.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes?
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Request to approve marketing agreement amendment between Utility Services Partners Private Label, Inc., which is the Service Line Warranties of America and the City of Lathrup Village.
So back in 2018, the city entered an agreement with Service Line Warranties of America so they could market and offer essentially their insurance services for water and sewer, exterior water and sewer lines throughout the community. This has been ongoing since 2018, like I said, and they, as of recently, have extended their offerings to include interior water and sewer lines and water heaters. So since this is a new offering, they are coming back to us to update their agreement, and this is what is included in your packet. All they're essentially asking for from the city is to give them approval to market within the community and to be able to utilize our logo on their marketing materials. And in return, we do get 50 cents a month per service that someone opts into. So we do receive minimal revenue from this program, and from what we hear from residents that do opt into it, it is a benefit for them.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion.
I will make a motion to approve amendment number 1 to sewer and marketing agreement with Utility Service Partners Private Label Incorporated.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to make note that the company did agree to provide us with marketing materials, and then the city will be providing that information on the e-newsletter so that people are aware, or they believe that it's a true company that they can use, that Lathrup Village is on board with. So just wanted to make note of that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment that I learned during our study session that this marketing agreement automatically renews unless either party opts out of it. I don't see that as an issue personally, because anecdotally, it seems like the people that are participating in the program are getting a lot of benefit out of it, so it seems like something that we should continue to support. But people should know that there are opportunities for either the city or Utility Service Partners Private Label Incorporated to opt out of the agreement at various points during the agreement.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is the second reading request to amend Ordinance Chapter 77, Urban Redevelopment by amending Article 1, Downtown Development Authority, Section 77-7, Board of Directors.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is just a continuation from last month. As we discovered, there's this discrepancy between our ordinance and the DDA bylaws based on the number of members who should be on the board. By correcting this ordinance, this will now match the bylaws, fixing that, and then we can proceed without any confusion.
Thank you. Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading and update to Ordinance Chapter 77, Urban Redevelopment by amending Article 1, Downtown Development Authority, Section 77-7, Board of Directors.
Second?
It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion?
So the language update will update the ordinance to reflect a DDA membership of 8 members instead of 10?
Yes, 8 members and an executive director, which currently is 10 members and an executive director.
Gotcha. Okay. So 9 total members.
Correct.
Thank you. And that matches what's in the bylaws of the DDA already.
Yes.
Great.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Request to approve revocable permanent encroachment license for 28001 Southfield Road.
Thank you, Mayor. So Aesthetics and Beyond LLC, they're the new owners of this property. While doing all the renovations there, they realized there is technically an alleyway at the back side of their property that is actually the majority of their parking lot. So for this for their opening and their project, they're just looking to receive an encroachment license from the city. They've paid the fees, they've gotten the proper insurance, and this is just looking to approve myself and the city attorney to work on the formal agreement for this. One thing to note, there is a sanitary sewer line that runs through that alley that we were able to find, so that will be included within the encroachment agreement that is drafted.
Thank you. Who would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the revocable permanent encroachment license application from Aesthetics and Beyond LLC for the abandoned portion of public alleyway behind 28001 Southfield Road, which serves as a portion, I don't know if that's
Important.
yeah, or somebody made a error. Okay, of their parking lot, and instruct the city manager and city attorney to finalize an easement agreement to access all public and franchise utilities within the full width of the alleyway.
Second?
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just one question probably for Leanne. So the encroachment is would be for the whole 20 feet of the alley, right? Not just the half of 10 feet that would be associated with like an alleyway vacation, correct? So it's the whole 20 feet?
It's whatever's the survey shows that's encroaching, so yeah, if it's the whole 20 feet,
Okay.
that's what it would be covering.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, do we know why like the previous owner didn't need this encroachment?
We believe they did. Unfortunately, we just couldn't find the formal application or it wasn't included in BSNA. So trying to track that down was difficult. So when we were going through this and working with them and their attorney, we wanted to be on the safe side and make sure they had this document.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
Any
think,
change of ownership would require one anyway, but they should have, it was our understanding that they should have had one, that did have one. But with any change of ownership, you would need a new one anyway.
Yeah, not under the understanding that they would have passed the license or the encroachment over. I was just curious as to why the previous owner, or I guess no recognition.
And yeah, they may have, but unfortunately, we just couldn't find the record when we were going through it.
Okay.
yeah, and I think like, Kelly, maybe you remember 4 or 5 years ago, we put together a more formal encroachment, process, which we didn't have in place before that. So it's possible that they may not have had one.
We'll confirm with whatever is specific to this, like as the city administrator's already pointed out that there is the sanitary sewer line, whatever, or if there's any type of changes, paving, landscaping that needs to be addressed in that, in the actual license, that'll be addressed in there.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes?
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes,
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
thank you. Next we'll have, that was not, the request to appoint a planning commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. So we had one recent planning commissioner whose term has expired and they decided not to seek reappointment. So Austin and I have solicited applications for this, and including your packet are 3 applications we have received. Additionally, we did receive an additional one over the weekend that I sent you an email this morning including.
Thank you. The recommendation comes from me for the most part for the consideration by the council, and it's my recommendation to appoint Nicole Chenault to the Planning Commission for a term of 3 years. You want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dennis Nordmore to the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nicole has a very impressive resume, but to me, it looks like it's more management consulting based, whereas it does seem where Dennis Nordmo has a little bit more relevant experience to the Planning Commission.
I was impressed by Dennis's resume and decades of experience working on challenging housing issues in the city of Detroit, not exclusively, but primarily. That's why I chose to make that motion.
And just for everyone, just to understand, I am the only woman that's on any of our boards, just FYI. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Barksdale,
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have the proclamation for the Daughters of American Revolution. It's something that we do every year, where 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States, our nation's foundation document. And it will be, whereas the Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore I, Kelly Garrett, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Lathrup Village of the state of Michigan, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. That does not have to be voted on or anything. Next one is going to be for the National Suicide Prevention Month proclamation. September is known as the National Suicide Prevention Month. It's intended to help raise awareness surrounding suicide prevention, resources available in the community. And World Suicide Prevention Day is observed each year on September 10th. Oakland County Health Network is committed to being a zero suicide organization and cultivate a network of providers who are engaged in zero suicide philosophy. Now therefore be it resolved that Oakland Community Health Network hereby recognizes September 2024 as National Suicide Prevention Month. OCHN calls upon our individuals, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, faith-based organizations, and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of suicide prevention, the need for appropriate and accessible services to assist individuals in crisis.
Thank you. Could I just make a quick? Or
Absolutely.
Is there anything formal that needs to happen after that? Or I can just make a comment? Okay. No, I just wanted to say I'm definitely fully in support of this. I lost a high school friend to suicide this summer. So this is definitely a resource that we need. I wanted to know, is it something that we will put on our website or as a resource? Okay. I mean, not to say that we're like the most popular website in the world, but just to have it as a resource, just because I guess, you never know who could be affected by suicide, so.
Thank you. Anyone else?
In relation to part of what Councilperson Jennings said, if we had that web developer on staff, we would be one of the best websites.
Councilmember Barksdale, I think we hired a great website builder, so I think
We did.
It looks pretty good. It looks pretty
He
good.
just
So-
hasn't
I
mentioned that
agree. I agree.
in several months.
Since we're still talking about suicide prevention at this point, are we good with that?
Yes.
Okay. City administrator report.
Nothing this month.
City attorney.
Nothing to report.
Reports of boards, commissions, committees. Unfinished new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one thing. For Southfield Public Schools, we're working on getting both reps to be at our next meeting. So I'll be working with Mike to make sure they're on the agenda. Their schedule is a little heavy because they have to attend both council meetings, Southfield and Lathrup Village. So we're trying to make sure we're not conquering their schedule as high school students. So
So are there multiple, or is this?
it's two. So the school board actually requested that we have both school board reps come instead of just university rep. So we're just working on their schedule to make sure they can attend both
Good.
council meetings.
There's an update on the planning commission. We did not meet this month. The meeting was canceled because of a lack of agenda items, but we're anticipating a new project. I have a site plan to come up for review in October, so we'll definitely be meeting in October. And hopefully people driving around the city are noticing a lot of development going along on Southfield Road, which is all the result of previous site plans that had been reviewed, some of which came with special land use requirements that came before the city council. So there's a lot of activity going on, which is great. But I want to be clear about, because recently the issue around the school and what's going to happen with the project plan around the school came up. The school does not have a development plan that's before the planning commission yet. It will come up at some point, but there are many steps that need to happen before we get to that point. So if anybody has a notion that the city has already approved some sort of a project to do something specific with the school, that has not happened yet, but there is a lot of progress going on with the Suriname Corporation that owns it to develop that that parcel. There's a lot more that has to happen before we get to that point. Plenty of opportunities for public comment and public input before any groundbreaking happens there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
On Parks and Rec, we're hoping to have Fall Fest and Trivia in November, planning on having them in November. We're working with Austin, the DDA director, to try and figure out something to do for this December. Please look at our Facebook, look at the Parks and Rec Facebook page, and we're having our final Food Truck Friday at Golden Gate Park. So please come out and support that event and all events that we do. We appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Nothing on the Finance Review Committee.
Any unfinished or new business? Have public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. It is just a dialogue for the public comment. And you want to come up to, not a dialogue.
Lecture.
Rick,
Podium.
just a quick question. If the city's in such financial dire straits, why have we been told for months and months and months that the general fund was in good shape, and that when people brought up issues or concerns about the budget, we were all told, don't worry about it. And now we're being told, we're in a really deep hole. How did we go from being on the ground to being in over our heads? That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hi, Mary Lou Resnick, San Jose and Santa Barbara on the corner. This may or may not be a good time, but I would like to know, since we are in dire straits, I was under the impression, or I'd heard, that residents are suing the city of Lathrop, and I would like to ask that you speak on that, because again, money going towards that, I'm sure it can't be cheap.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anyone else? I will lean towards our city attorney for the portion of lawsuit.
There's currently a lawsuit that was filed regarding petitions that were submitted, citizen-initiated petitions related to the allowance or disallowance of recreational marijuana businesses in the city. So there are two proposals that were presented and approved by the clerk under statutory guidelines, and they were submitted, and they are on the ballot, or they were approved by Oakland County as proper ballot language. So there were a group of residents that have sued or filed a complaint in the Oakland County Circuit Court trying to have this ballot language removed, stating the basis of their allegations are that the signatures were improper in some manner on these petitions. And so they're seeking to have the court issue what's called a writ of mandamus, which is the court ordering the proper, a governmental official that has a duty to do something to properly do it. And their claim is that this initiative, the 2 ballot proposals, should be removed from the ballot. So we are currently addressing that complaint that was filed in the circuit court. And there is also a motion on that matter that was filed and it is set to be heard by the circuit court judge on Wednesday. So that's pretty much the status of it, that the city's position is that, you know, they acted properly in all manner in having the voter-initiated petition ballot language submitted to the county for inclusion on the ballot for the voters to decide on the two proposals. One is called a referendum, and it's for a charter amendment, and then the other one was to initiate an ordinance, and they're both related to the recreational marijuana business issues. So that's where we're standing. But as it stands, those issues are currently, they were approved back in August by the city clerk, just verifying the signatures as required under the law. And then the petitions meeting those number of signatures were submitted to Oakland County Election Commission for inclusion on the ballot, and other technical procedures that I won't get into now were followed with respect to submission of the petition language to be included on the ballot. And again, this was a voter-initiated, citizen-initiated, the 2 proposals. So we were simply, the city received those petitions, the clerk reviewed them under the requirements as set forth in law, and then they were submitted to the county. They were accepted by the county, put on the ballot, and then subsequent to that time and subsequent to the expiration of the time for approval of ballot language, because there are, you know, makes sense. You can't just put language on or take it off at any time, just like you can't, you know, put a candidate on and take them off. There are certain timelines, and so this objection by a lawsuit was filed subsequent to that time, and so now we are before a circuit court judge to decide that matter.
Thank you. Mayor and council comments.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Before you start the 3 minutes, Madam Mayor, if you would allow me, I'm probably going to run out of time here. I'm going to ask if you can allow me to stand back up here and complete my comments. Is that possible?
If there's nobody else that
If there's, I'll go after them, no problem.
Sure.
Okay. Ian Ferguson, Lathrup Village. Some of you in this room know me personally. We've broken bread together, we've had drinks together. We've talked about politics together. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I respect your position. Some of you know me, some of you don't. You just know me from this video, or you just know me by someone pointing at that person. There's Ian Ferguson. But let me introduce myself. I'm the husband of Christine Perry Ferguson. She is in the audience. My wife is suffering from brain cancer. She died March 5th, 2023. And through a series of events, I was able to keep her alive and find a cannabinoid cancer protocol so she could be here today, to see her daughter graduate in 2023, to see her daughter go to MSU, who is now a sophomore. That's why I am the face of cannabis. $118,000 is here for our taking, for our city. Why can't we realize that? This committee is doing a hell of a job, but they're not gonna stand up here and say, let's go after cannabis. So I'm gonna take the blow for this city. We're wasting time. Southfield, Madison Heights, Berkeley have collected $118,000, $59,000 per retail shop. Why can't we do that? Let me give you some facts. Renovations of old buildings makes your business sector look a lot better. It's an economic benefit, $118,000 every year, literally handing it to the city. It goes right to the city, not to the DDA, Ms. Moore. Property values will increase between 3 and 5%. All those other cities I just mentioned, they proved it. Business sector. Property values in the business sector will increase. We've seen that in the other cities. Business district. It's more attractive to other people. You've seen the springboard effect. Panera Bread. All of a sudden, everyone wants to be around Panera Bread. Cannabinoid businesses actually bring that. When you tear down an old building and bring another one back up. I'm just asking you guys, people out there that are on the fence, think about your city. They just said literally, we have no other revenue stream. I'm literally handing you $118,000 annually. Trust me, this is gonna disappear when Congress passes cannabis nationally. It's gone. We have to get on this train. Every other city has figured it out. Why can't we? Because of a handful of people that want to sue the city? Isn't that a detriment to our city? You're suing the city that needs help to try to increase a revenue stream. Disgraceful just on its face. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to be heard? I'm assuming you got finished with yours. Okay.
I want to go.
Yes.
All right, I'm Kevin Lysick, and yes, I think some of the facts that Ian mentioned are accurate. It's $59,000 per dispensary. You know what? Let's just fill up entire Southfield Road with them. We'll have millions of dollars coming in. All our problems will be over, okay? But what about some of the things Ian didn't mention, some of the negative effects? Why do these dispensaries have armed guards? Because they're cash. They get robbed. Stuff happens. Do we want that here? I don't.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm sorry, I disagree with you, because I just went to Quality Roots today. There's no armed guard there. You go to Berkeley, you go to Hazel Park, you go to anywhere. Ferndale also, there's no armed guards. I'm sorry, do your research.
I've been there, I've seen them.
Mayor and council, you have a conflict of interest. I'm gonna ask you to terminate Carol Green's application from the Parks and Rec. She submitted this lawsuit along with 3 other lunatics. She cannot be on this board, nor can she be the face of Parks and Rec. She even named a person working with her in the lawsuit. It's disgraceful just on its face. I'm asking you to terminate her application immediately. You could go in closed session next week, next month, whatever you want to do. Please terminate her application and just be done with this until this lawsuit is completed. It's disgraceful. Secondly, remember I told you guys that there are headwinds coming up. Well, guess what? One of those headwinds is when people don't pay their water bill. For example, Autumn Suzanis hasn't paid her water bill in well over 2 years, to the tune of $9,000. Currently, she has $2,893, according to the BSNA. January 15th, she had $3,207 added to her taxes on the prior year. And lastly, the back billing program, $3,203, where you had an inch and a half water main customers that were reassessed. She is also a part of this lawsuit. And she came up here a couple months ago with charts, out of breath, trying to explain that Mayor Pro Tem Cantor had something to do with all these water bill problems. Here's an easy thing. Pay your water bill to the tune of $9,000. The city is actually footing her bill. When you don't pay your water bill, guess what? The city pays your water bill for you, and they're asking you to pay it. If you don't pay it, they have to send it to Oakland County. And when they send it to Oakland County, they tack it onto your taxes, your property taxes. Now, I'm sure the IRS will not want to know if you're taking your water bill and claiming it as a loss. That's illegal. And I promise you, I know a lot of IRS agents. If that happens, just gonna point that finger. Please, just pay your water bill. If you have problems, Mike Green will certainly help you with that. If you have a fixed income, that's what we do. I sat on this council for 6 years trying to help people who could not pay their water bill. But people who have 10 people in their house and saying it's a Mayor Pro Tem Cantor problem. No, you're using the water and you don't want to pay it. It's a damn disgrace. Shame on you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to be heard? No. So, mayor and council comments. You know, I am going to start this one because it was very, and Leanne, please stop me when I'm not saying the right thing legally. It was very disheartening to wake up and have someone banging on your door to be served with a lawsuit. I will say that, and it goes with the territory. What bothers me is it is the same people that's saying that they love the city and that we need some money, and you're taking money from the city to pay for our city attorney and asking for fees. That disturbs me, so I'm in agreement with you. I will never tell you whether I'm for or against cannabis, but I also did the journey with you all, and I understand it, and I saw the miracle of that. And because I did do my due diligence, I did go to a dispensary, and I didn't see, with my own eyes, no guards. Over Hazel Park, off of 9 Mile, no guards. I think what I also have a problem with is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to take away the will of the people. If you don't want cannabis, then say no on the ballot. Trying to take it off the ballot is kind of, in the words of some of my friends, that's kind of shady. You're trying to take it away from, you know, the democratic right to decide what you want to see in your city. And so we're all passionate about it. And I will say, honestly, I really have mixed emotions about it because I just read an article about liquor stores and that we have liquor stores all over the place. And then just driving down Southfield, I was in pure shock of how many liquor stores there are. So I'm concerned about cannabis. I am concerned about it. But then we're suffering and our fund balance is coming down. But we don't want this money. We just want to figure out how to tax the people more to get more money out of the people that are already struggling. Because I went to the grocery store finally, and I was in pure shock from that. I'm never doing that again. I'll just go out and eat, I guess. But just drink water and lemons. So, and I can deal with that too. So I have that struggle where, wow, I don't want my house to go up by $200, $300, $400. And I think I can afford it. I just don't want to afford it. So what about the people that can't comfortably afford it? And then you have $100,000 that could possibly be on the table. Just saying. Just make it make sense for me. And I'm not the smartest cookie in the bunch, but make it make sense for me. They're very passionate over something that, one, if you don't want it, vote it down. Two, if you don't like it, don't do it. Three, I'm not gonna even speak on the water thing, because I thought that was very interesting, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I'm laughing only because I'm like a little angry. So, I'll just say, there's going to be a grand opening of Aesthetics and Beyond on Saturday. Total change, because I can't even, I'll say something and then she will take the gavel from me, I guarantee you. It's going to be on Saturday, this 9/28, 6 p.m. down the street. And then also, which maybe I was being a little too fast because there is a soft opening across the street. I was trying to get us over there by 10 o'clock, but I don't know if that's gonna work also. But I wanna also thank the Finance Committee, for doing what you did. I'm so confused in what, my brain is going 1,000 miles per hour. And I wanna thank Ian and Frank Solinsky for what you did for the Memorial Park, for cleaning the bricks, and,
Frank did that all by himself.
thank you, Frank. I will say that I did submit a recommendation that Frank be recognized in the Oakland County magazine that is for seniors, and so we'll find out what happens from that. So I get the love that we love about this city, and I think that there's a lot of healing that we have to do, and I think there's a lot of respect and understanding of each one of us, and I think that there's a lot going on, and I'll leave it at that. There's a lot going on just around this little situation, and it should probably stop. I don't like to be stalked outside my house, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I also just want to give a second thank you to the Finance Committee for all their work and maybe some work ahead of time or in the future to do some educational education if this does get on the ballot. To Rick Wiz's comments, first off, back in January when we did our financial report, nobody said that the city was in rosy condition. That report was to explain why there was $420,000 of a hit to our general fund that we didn't expect, and also to talk about the fact that some of that money was coming back. We are not in financial dire straits. That's basically social media rumors coming from some of your friends who goal is to make council look bad and to especially make the mayor and myself look bad at every opportunity they get. This is, the financial committee's work is being proactive to keep us from getting into financial dire straits. We have a financial problem. It's something that we've been addressing over years through some of the cuts that council has made, that I listed out in the presentation. And you know, the talk of doing a Headley override is something that we've been talking about for at least 5 years now. It's been talked about with our auditors. Our auditors continually suggest it. We've been doing whatever we can to avoid you know, having to hit the taxpayers with you know, some type of increase in revenue. And it's getting to the point, especially as I've said multiple times tonight with the police contract, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult to do that without keep services without getting some new form of revenue. So I look at this as the city as being very proactive and trying to address that situation so that we don't get into financial dire straits. We still have, what is it, $680,000 in our general fund, something like that. It's not optimal. We'd like it to be better. We'd like it to be about 20% of our overall budget, but obviously for reasons that we talked about earlier, it's not. We do have a balanced budget this year, at least prior to any budget amendments. I know we were talking about what, I don't remember the number, like a gain of about $20,000 to the general fund, which is not a lot, but it's better than what we've had in the past years. So to characterize it as being in financial dire straits and why haven't we done anything up to this point, I think is not a fair assessment. And then the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to send condolences out to Don McGee and his family. I think many of you know Maria has passed recently, and you know, she was a wonderful individual and an asset to the community. I bumped into her at Market Fresh, I think it was about 2 months ago, and we stood there in the yogurt aisle and had a half-hour conversation, and it was amazing how much she knew about what was going on in the city, and it was great to talk to her. And she, like I said, she was an asset, and she'll be missed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah. First, unrelated, I'm running on little sleep. I say that to say, we did speak about the suicide prevention being on the website, and my tired brain, I haven't gotten to see in council as much as I normally do because I've been absent a few meetings. I wanted to have a little humorous moment with Jalen. I did not realize how I am, I don't want to make suicide a joke, and I apologize for anyone I may have offended. Thank you, Mayor. I shouldn't have used my moment to have fun with Jalen in that moment. I know there's a lot of very heated people, and people can say what they want to say. I just don't want to, I would like, if we aren't calling names, that's people's right, but I don't want any name calling to start up.
I think it's in the PD or something.
But again, that's your right. I know we're talking about potentially very polarizing opinions, and as I try to always say, you know, we're one community. We're either gonna vote for it or not, we're gonna have it or not, but I just want us to be able to coexist together, regardless of the decisions that are made, that the citizens vote on, just for us to be able to still try to work together and to not cross any lines so that we are unable to work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a couple things. Recently, the DDA requested a feasibility study be done on two currently green or undeveloped parcels of land, one that's in the DDA district, one that is not. The review of that to figure out what are the opportunities or options that could be considered to do with those pieces of land turned into accusations that a proposal had already been accepted by the city and development was a foregone conclusion. In addition, the Cernal Corporation put together a mock-up of a potential plan for something that they might want to do with the school as part of an application to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation requesting funding support from MEDC to help offset the cost of potentially developing that property because it's going to be very expensive to remediate the asbestos and other environmental issues inside of that property, and it needs to be developed in a way that makes sense from a business perspective, and they can use any help that they can get on that. They asked for people in city committees and on the city council to write letters in support of that. Those two things turned into accusations that foregone conclusions had already been made about what the development of the school was going to look like and what development of these two parcels is going to look like. I just want to make it really clear. It is the job of this council and all of the committees that we appoint people to be proactive and ask all sorts of questions to gather information that is necessary in order to make important decisions that we have to make. It is not an indication of some conspiracy to push forward any agenda other than trying to consider ways to improve the financial well-being of the city. That's the only thing that we're trying to do with things like feasibility studies and potential plans for things that might happen in the city. They're not an indication of this is the only way, right? There's always going to be plenty of opportunity if people are willing to accept it to come and make public comment in planning commission meetings, in DDA meetings, in city council meetings. We talked in the study session today about scheduling a town hall to get input from residents about things that may be important to individuals in the city, both residents and business owners. We are trying to do what we can to get the information that we can in a transparent way that supports opportunities for public input, but people need to take advantage of those opportunities. So I just want to make that statement. Secondly, the DDA paid for a bunch of landscaping and gathered together a bunch of volunteers, including several of you that are in the audience today, to help plant and make our city hall area look beautiful. The DDA is able to invest in that because the city hall happens to be in the DDA district. And so I really appreciate the DDA stepping up to make that happen and all the volunteers that took time out of their busy weekends in order to be part of that. So thank you for that. I also want to pass condolences on the McGee family on the loss of Maria. She was a really lovely person, and she was tough as nails. We were at a Oktoberfest party once where she happened to slip coming out of a sliding glass doorway, fell and broke her wrist, like her arm, like really badly. It was very scary, but she recovered from that, and a million more medical ailments that she had to deal with at the end of her life. And so she was a beautiful and lovely person, very caring. I got a chance to talk to her while canvassing during the last election cycle back in the September-October timeframe, and she was always engaged and a huge support of the city, a big important part of the Lathrup Village Women's Council, and the Lathrup Village Women's Club, and I know everybody on that club that had time with her is going to miss her greatly. So just for her commitment to the city and for all the people that will mourn her loss, I'm with you. Thank you.
May I make a correction on the fact that it was a support for getting funding from the MEDC for the building next door. That's what we were trying to get the.
Yes, I think I said that early in my
okay.
comments and misstated it maybe
I
towards
just-
the end of my comments, but yes, it was, the request was from the Suriname Corporation to get letters of support for their application to MEDC to get funding from MEDC. That's all it was for.
And just to reiterate that is a privately owned building, and he wants our support. And basically, if we can't help him in getting funding from the MEDC, it shall sit again. So.
Yeah, the choice is between letting it be what it is now or trying to find opportunities to do something in partnership with the private owner in the future. And that's all that request was about.
And it's been sent off to everybody that we need to send it to as of today.
Thank you.
Councilman Jennings.
Thank you. Mayor Garrett, so definitely I will agree with you. Suicide apology. That was not the intent. I don't believe it was your intent as well. I know your heart, so I know that was not our intent. Then also I want to thank the Financial Committee. I think you guys did a great job, and I think this is a great opportunity for the community to look into different options, different ways to support our community. The landscaping looks great, shout out. And then also, I just appreciate everyone's opinion. I appreciate everyone feeling comfortable to share what they need to say in this room. And I just hope we can all just hopefully vote on those things, and we can continue to make this community just a great place, and just everyone feel welcomed and comfortable in this space. So, and that's all I really wanted to say tonight.
I want to say one more thing, and real quickly. I just want to build on what you said about having a conversation and getting along. I just want to urge people to have the conversation with us, come to us with your input, regardless of whether you think we disagree with you or not. Let's have that conversation. Don't go to social media and just start posting stuff that either isn't true or does nothing to further the cause. I got a text message in between the meetings that somebody's already out there on social media saying that our committee was violating the Open Meetings Act, which we never did. Those people can come to us. I may disagree with you, but I'll have a conversation with you, as many people in the community can attest. Same with the rest of council. Stop holding up the process. We want your opinion, even if we disagree with you. So don't go to social media. Come to us. Come to the various boards and send us emails. Meet with us. Come to council, like with your public comments. I mean, we want to hear from you. So I just wanted to build on what you were saying.
And I'm so sorry, because I forgot to say this too, and we really are gonna end this really soon. Seriously, it was brought up at the last meeting, about me violating the Open Meetings Act, because I whispered, to someone, I think it was Bruce, but I was asking a name of a person. And so it bothered me because I like to self-correct. And I looked it up, and it is section 15.263, section 1, is the public must have the opportunity to be informed and observe the decision-making process. We were not making a decision at that time when I whispered. So I just want to say Michigan's Open Meetings Act, Act 267 of 1976, and you can look this up, does not explicitly prohibit whispering during public meetings. However, the act emphasizes that the business of public bodies must be conducted openly and transparently. So I will say I apologize for whispering, but it was not during a time that we were making a decision. Matter of fact, I believe it was during public comment, so I can figure out who was speaking. So for the resident that said that I was violating from page 10, there's your section. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to say?
Likewise, whispering, can I have that bottle of water? Also doesn't rise to the level of an
Sorry.
Open Meetings Act
Sorry,
violation.
and I concur with everyone says, and also, and I will say this, because I was very passionate about this. We were elected fairly and squarely by the people, for the people. I think it's a major violation and a major issue when you are following people to their homes, that is an elected body. And I'm gonna keep saying that it's unacceptable, and I personally will deal with someone that violates my safety and my freedom in a way that you're not going to like it, and that is through legal means. And I don't think anyone up here on council deserves to be stalked or harassed for what we're doing for free. Now I'm really done, I promise. So now I need to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to request that we enter into a closed session for strategy and negotiation sessions connected with the negotiation of a collective.
Before you finish that,
Almost there. Hold that thought, because I don't know, because he needs to leave and we have to go into closed session.
Well, to go into closed session, you need
All of us.
the quorum, yeah.
What's a quorum?
Well, quorum,
Four.
yeah.
So
He said
So,
full,
a full?
full
I don't
quorum.
think this.
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you said full.
No, well, you need a two-thirds vote. So
guys better
if you
act
have
right.
two-thirds vote,
It's not that, I don't know if that's gonna be the right pressure to put on anyone. So, I mean,
so,
Oh, we'll have 80%.
not if we don't all agree.
Well, true. Well, let's
So that's what
do
I'm
the
saying.
motion.
so, I
Second
mean,
by,
it really, he's part of the meeting. I don't think that it's appropriate at this point to not participate in the closed session that's scheduled for this meeting.
So is it where we have to do another special meeting another day to discuss this?
we can move forward. I will just be very quiet.
Okay, I'll make a motion to request entering into a closed session for strategy and negotiation sessions connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement per MCL 15.268, Section C.
Second.
It's been moved in second, roll call.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Barksdale, Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Oh, you got them all?
I thought I did.
I know, I'm like, right up, I went into some other place. In my mind. We'll be back. Would like to make a motion to come out of closed session.
Motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
It's been moved in second. I don't think you have to do a roll
Motion.
call.
Let's just do one.
Okay, roll call.
Okay, Councilmember Barksdale.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor.
Yes.
Mayor Garrett,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hammond.
Yes.
And Councilmember Jennings.
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Second.